for anyone who's new to this, just please know that this is our monthly demo. IncentiFind holds monthly commercial demonstrations. So today is really going to be geared towards anything in the commercial sector. So no home improvement projects will be demonstrated here. We do plan to kick off next year a home improvement channel. So if that's ever something that perhaps your company or group deals with, maybe you're a home flipper, please know that we serve those folks, or you assist any sort of single family residents in home improvement or home upgrades. That channel will be opening up. This one is solely for the commercial real estate sector. That does include commercial real estate assets for both public and private developers, as well as nonprofits, hence why we've got a fantastic guest today. And it also includes multifamily, as well as master plan communities of single family dwellings. And you're going to see one of those here. So if you're a production builder or serve production builders, that does, believe it or not, in the world of incentives, fall on the commercial side. So speaking here is Natalie Goodman, myself. I'm founder CEO of IncentiFind. Quick tidbit about me, my background's architecture. So I specifically specialized for about 12 years in embedding sustainable measures for companies or groups like Shell Real Estate, Johnson & Johnson, the Department of Defense, specifically the United States Air Force, U.S. federal courthouse systems, and so many others. And as you can imagine today, I'll get into why both, public and private groups like that want to embed sustainable measures into their real estate assets, but it's to increase the value and reduce the ongoing monthly expenditure that's associated with real estate. So that led me to found IncentiFind, and I'll tell you a little bit about that today. I'm really excited to also hand the floor over to Alan for a couple minutes and introduce himself. You guys know, if you've ever attended one of our demos, we love to feature some of our key partnerships, and GrantSource is one of those. So super excited to have Alan on today. But Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, what a quick fun fact. Natalie and I met about 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago at a competition, and she is a lot brighter and smarter than I am. So I am eternally grateful just to be on the same webinar as her. Excited to be here. Just a little bit about GrantSource. We started GrantSource after we got burned with one of our nonprofits that we started. We had a grant writer that stole our money. Long story short, it drove us to action. We weren't happy with the way that grants were found, tracked, written, and managed. So being a millennial, we thought there's got to be a better system out there. There wasn't, so we created it. And since 2018, we felt people get, and these are old numbers, $10 million at the beginning of 2020, just because all the CARES Act, and Natalie's going to tell you some great things that IncentiFind is able to do with real estate property owners. We'll probably end up this year tripling what we've done in the first 3 years and help organizations find and secure about $30 million. And IncentiFind's a huge part of that. So I'm excited to be a part of this webinar.
Definitely. Awesome, Alan. And yeah, you'll kind of see us around the startup ecosystem in Houston, as well as at the national level. I know you guys have a national presence as well. But yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. That's awesome, Alan. I'm sure there's more to come too.
Absolutely.
So, for those who are new, those returning, you guys are in the driver's seat as far as what you see every single month. You know this from our website. We let you choose what assets you want to see. We're on track to connect about 25,000 properties to $20 billion in incentives every single year. So guys, we touch a lot of assets. So pick one anywhere you want to see in the United States. We got one here up on the screen. This was last month. You guys wanted to see a manufacturing facility ground up, which means new construction in Colorado. We do have to anonymize. So if you're wondering details about this project, we can't do that, folks. We've got, fantastic relationships with our developers, property owners, and REITs, as well as others who serve them. I want to make sure we're incredibly respectful to the fact that they let us use a lot of these projects on these demonstrations. So I'm going to talk about our 3-step process. You see it right there on recap. This particular group came to us. They own this asset. They knew they were building building it up from the ground and embedding sustainable measures. So they came to IncentiFind, completed step 1, which is a 2-minute survey. You got to tell us about your project so we can connect you to incentives, right? They purchased a verify report. We'll talk about that here in a second. It starts at about, $500, but it does have a range. Don't worry, as you fill out the survey, we're going to show you the price right there on the screen. So you're never, left hanging on how much our verify report is. Essentially what a verify report does is what it says right there on the screen. It tells you exactly what your asset's eligible for. This asset was eligible for 24 incentives. It doesn't mean that you want to go after all 24. There's a good, a bad, and an ugly about going after incentives. But we've got a team, a commercial incentive team that is dedicated. They live and breathe these incentives at various levels of government that we'll show you here in a second. So they can help you on a 1-hour call, cherry pick the best incentives for your project. So eligible for 24. This owner seriously considered 5 incentives. You can see what that was worth in a cash reimbursement, 30 grand right in their pocket just for the LED lightings, water heaters, boilers, controls, insulation, and other appliances they were going to install anyways. So that's a nice, flush of cash that they'll get back. And then we also connected them to some other tax-related incentives for electric vehicle charge stations and capital investment or economic development there. And you can see what that was targeted at. Here's the other project that we featured last month. This was a public facility. Folks wanted to see something in the public sector. So we grabbed one in the Texas area. We can tell you it's an existing asset and that it was due for an upgrade. A lot of the assets we see are about 30 to 40 years old, so they're due up for some major rehabilitations or major upgrades, right? Again, 3-step process. This particular representative of this public facility filled out our 2-minute survey. They went on to purchase one of our verify reports. Remember, starts at $500, but the price is always displayed right there on the screen for you as you fill out the survey. They were eligible for 26 incentives, but you're going to want to have that 1-hour call with our experts so they can help you cherry pick the right incentives. You can see they also went after only 5 incentives. Let's jump over to how IncentiFind helped them capture those 5 incentives and what they were worth, okay? There was $40K for lighting, roofing insulation, HVAC controls. So that's a cash reimbursement. There was also $15,000 for solar installation. There was a requirement on this asset. And then we also connected them to a public sector. It's a focused, public sector focused loan, specifically for energy efficiency. So they were able to grab or get a hold of a $25,000 loan. So I think you're kind of hopefully getting the picture of how we help identify incentives that are available for either new construction or existing building upgrades, again, private or public sector. So we still stand as the nation's only database for real estate focused incentives. Despite being 3 years old, we are one of the fastest growing real estate tech companies based out of Houston, Texas. We do serve all 50 states, no US territories. Incentives don't operate the same in US territories, folks. And we have jumped over to across the northern border to Canada with some of our corporations who own real estate in on the Canadian side. Let me tell you about the 24,000 incentives and counting that we house at IncentiFind. But if there's really only one thing you take away, if this is your first time hearing about IncentiFind, it's that we connect 25,000 commercial properties, you heard me say this earlier, to 20 billion in incentives. That's every single year. And we do this using a 2-minute survey, okay? So you can see there's the 5 levels of government right there on your screen. Every year by law, these levels of government must offer incentives for above code measures in the real estate environment. I'll show you what those look like here in a second. Like 90% of real estate is going above code, doesn't even realize it, and they're eligible for these incentives, okay? So it's federal, state, county, city, and utility level governments. When I say utility, I'm talking gas, electric, and water. And again, this is for property owners, developers, and tenants. Don't think because you lease a space that you're eliminated from taking advantage of cost-saving incentives. There are tenant-focused incentives that we certainly can connect you to. So here's the 24,000 incentives. Let's talk about the categories on the left-hand side, okay? It's tax, grants, fee waivers, rebates, bill credits. You don't need to memorize that. When you buy one of our reports, we go ahead and show you every single incentive across those 5 levels of government, and we tell you exactly what it is and how much it's worth, okay? So those are the 5 major categories. Notice on the screen on the left-hand side, our database is bifurcated. You've got a new construction side of the house and an existing building. The incentives offered for both those types of construction are vastly different. So the key word here is going above code. What do I mean by that? There's basic building code that's in every single city and state or state and local governments, however you want to look at it. And that basic building code will mandate certain things in real estate, right? From energy systems to water systems, as well as, just how the building is constructed. Typically, when installing equipment like lighting, HVAC, windows, roof, insulation, anything that kind of touches the energy systems or water systems, any product that your contractor, either your architect is speccing or your contractor's pulling off the shelves, you're probably installing something above code. How do you know? How do I know that? And how do you know that? Well, the fact is, manufacturers of a lot of these products like windows, HVAC, lighting, and the like, insulation, roof, you name it, they are not creating products just at basic building code. They're looking across the United States, they're picking the state or the local government with the most stringent building codes, and they're saying, look, I've got a product I want to sell at a national level. I'm going to choose the most stringent building code, right? And I'm going to create my product to be above that because I want it to stay on the shelves longer. So when your architect specs that product, when your GC pulls it off the shelf and installs it on your property, you're going above code. That's why I say 90% of real estate, either new construction or existing building upgrades, are going above code. Now you're eligible for the incentives you see on the screen. There's, broad categories that you see. There's 4 broad categories across new construction, existing buildings. Energy efficiency. This is indoor and outdoor. You heard me name a few things, but it's certainly not limited to indoor. Could be the LED lighting. That's typically the lowest, hanging fruit. But it also could be thermostats as well, AC unit changeouts, chillers, cogenerational systems, anything that touches that energy system indoor. It's the building envelope, the windows, the doors, the roof, even some of the building, or skin material, right? It's also outdoor. So if there's parking garage lighting, that certainly can receive an incentive as well. And then we have things like load management, demand response, or other types of programs, right? Renewables, just think solar. It's mostly going to be solar that we house, but we do have geothermal, wind. Mostly in real estate, we are seeing solar though. Water conservation, this is a growing topic. And I can see, I see somebody raise their hand. If you could just put your question in the chat box, unless there's something else that's going on, state your any difficulty that you might be having. For water conservation, this is indoor and outdoor. So this could be, maybe you've got a multifamily. It could be toilets, water, faucets, shower heads, you name it, all of those indoor fixtures, outdoor, rainwater harvesting, even landscaping can be incentivized depending on where you are in the United States. We've got a lot of drought-prone states that are worried about water right now. For the other category, that is the land that the asset sits on. So we're going to look at your building first holistically across all systems, right? Energy systems, water systems. Then we're going to look at the land that the asset sits on. So you could be in a brownfield development. Maybe you're looking at electric vehicle charge stations, really popular category for retail, mixed use, multifamilies, office, you name it. Maybe you're in an opportunity zone, a new market tax credit area, a PACE eligible area, which is just an innovative financing mechanism or loan. There's also resilience focused incentives. If you're mitigating flood, hurricane, fireproofing, and there's also smart building technology, especially with COVID right now, we got a huge transition to touchless everything. Yet there's incentives for that too. Wide array of incentives, but we really can't help you unless you fill out a 2-minute survey. And I'll walk you through our process here in a second. Majority of you on the line right here fall into one of these, 4 little check boxes, if you will. You're probably either helping a company, organization, or corporation, or maybe you're that corporation or company or organization yourself. But there's a huge transition in real estate to addressing environmental and sustainability goals. Let's take just any recent LinkedIn article that you've seen. Google, Microsoft, great examples of this, have all increased their commitments to energy reduction in their facilities, water reduction in their facilities, or solar commitments. That's not just for larger corporations. We've seen real estate groups that only do maybe a half dozen assets per year who even have similar commitments. So this is a growing trend that we're seeing in real estate. We also just have, corporations, companies, and organizations that own or lease real estate, and they know that it's incredibly expensive to maintain. So they want to look at incentives as a way to embed energy efficiency, water conservation, or begin to put solar on their property to begin to reduce the monthly operating expenditures, right, on that. We have capital improvement groups and operation and maintenance groups. They'll use IncentiFind to help find cost-saving incentives, and maybe they can stretch that budget that was only supposed to include a lighting upgrade to maybe include an HVAC upgrade, right? So you can use us in so many different ways. And I think the goal that you're beginning to hear here is that we're there to flush cost savings. Remember, we've got that clearinghouse of $20 billion a year. It was made and created for property owners, tenants, developers, and those serving them. We want to make sure that it gets out there. It gets leveraged for a lot of the work that's being done, okay? Here's our 3-step process. It's incredibly intuitive. First and foremost, I keep saying 2-minute survey, right? We can't connect a property without understanding your asset, whether it's been built and it's existing, or you're going to build it and maybe it's a feasibility or conceptual, or detailed design phase, right? So be sure to fill out that 2-minute survey. The most important thing on that screen is that we don't sell those surveys to third parties. We don't need to. And the reason why is because of how we've monetized it beyond in the step 2 and 3, right? So after you submit your search survey, you'll go on to purchase one of our Verify reports. Again, the price is going to be displayed as you're filling out the survey. So there's no guessing on how much could this cost you, okay? It is a flat fee. So once you see that price on the screen, that is the fee you pay. And it doesn't really vary, across, location or complexity. It typically is based on the number of buildings you're entering, right? And how those buildings or apartment complex, how many buildings are within that particular campus or apartment complex, right? In that Verify report, we are going to show you everything your asset is eligible to take advantage of at the federal level, at the state level, at the city level, at the county, and then at the utility levels, gas, electric, and water. Beyond just showing you incentives and getting you excited, we're going to tell you which ones we recommend, which one are low-hanging fruit. How much is that worth? How long does it take to apply? Can we help you apply? So again, it's not just about blasting you with information. It's about making sure that we can handhold you through that process, right? Of successfully capturing those incentives. And that's essentially what our apply services are. So you click a button right off of your Verify report and you just say, help me apply IncentiFind. We can take that off your plate. So let me talk about time commitment, because everyone always asks this. Is that that survey, 2 minutes, that you're on the hook for to tell us about that particular asset. Once you get your verify report, we recommend, this is not required, but I'd say 99% of our customers will do this. Book a 1-hour call to talk about the eligible incentives that you'll see listed. Remember those examples that I showed you earlier? They were eligible for 20-something incentives, but they only went after 5. There's a good, bad, and ugly to every single incentive. Our team deals with this, all day, every day, so they can really help you suss out which incentives are right for you. After you kind of cherry pick those incentives and finish that 1-hour call, the only time commitment is to forward us the documents for the incentives you cherry pick. So if you want to go after that lighting upgrade, well, we're going to need the specifications for that lighting. We're going to need the quantities. Where are the locations for that? So it's however long it takes you to forward those documents, or you can connect us to one of your lighting installers, HVAC installers, or whoever's representing the equipment that you're installing on the project, right? So really low time commitment. Last but not least, we've got how to plan for IncentiFind. Notice right there at the bottom, there's existing buildings and new construction. You see a typical project phase right there on your screen. Design, tender just means it's out for bid. Construction, and then handover of the asset. Doesn't matter if this is new construction or existing building, this is the same phase that any real estate asset's going to go through. Your ideal window for existing buildings, the sooner the better. There is a bottom of the 9th. If you're 60 business days before turning a wrench, pulling out that light fixture, changing anything out, you're not giving IncentiFind enough time to make sure that we get you approved for that incentive. So please know there is a too late for existing buildings. You want to get in well before 60 business days, not calendar, business days from that install. And that's just because governments can take a while to give us that approval, okay? For new construction, the sooner the better. Maybe you're teetering between 2 land parcels and you don't know which land parcel you want to go with to build your asset. You can come to IncentiFind as early as that. We have a lot of developers that do that. We can look at both land parcels, show you all the incentives. Maybe that's a game changer for where you locate your asset. So there's never too early for new construction, okay? There is a too late for new construction. We like to tell folks, if you are more than 12 months past your certificate of occupancy, you'll be cut off from majority of the incentive program. So I think the rule of thumb here is that for both of those scenarios, the sooner the better to get your 2-minute survey in, okay? And it takes about 10 business days for us to get that verify report back to you and get a call, that 1-hour call scheduled. So if you want to kind of plan how long it takes from IncentiFind, I'd say about 10 business days for us to get our process completed. Before I hand everything over to Alan, here was November's vote for a project. You guys wanted to see a master plan community. This was a ground up development in California. It is a massive development. We've done master plan communities as low as 25 homes. This is more like in the Grace, I think it's like 2,500 homes or more. You can see that this developer, came to IncentiFind. He has not put a shovel in the ground yet. So filled out a 2-minute survey. You can use the same survey, whether you've got, a tiny upgrade or a master plan community, right? The survey is incredibly smart. And with every answer that you submit, it adjusts to ask you the most appropriate questions to determine eligibility, okay? So filled out this 2-minute survey, purchased the report. We showed him, look, you're eligible for these single family homes, 2,500 of them that you're developing ground up. You're eligible for 22. Let's be smart about it. There's really 6 that you're going to want to go after. And you can see for those 6 incentives, we'll be helping him capture over about a 3-year phase, 1.5 million in cash reimbursements. Plus, we've connected him to at least a $2 million tax-related incentive for a brownfield development. So anyways, that's our master plan community. If you've got more questions on that, feel free to reach out after this webinar. But Alan, floor is yours. Tell us about GrantSource.
Phenomenal. Well, I want to thank you, Natalie, for doing what you do because it makes our job easier. We have partners, and as I said, Natalie and I met about 3 or 4 years ago. But right before she launched, we were in a competition together. And you know the old saying, right? If you can't beat them, join them. So we actually joined forces after that. And she had this great database. I had this grant platform. It's like, instead of competing, let's just put it together. So that's what we did. Just a little bit about GrantSource, how we work in the market. 3 really pillars of what we do. Number 1 is we have a digital platform, so it's accessible via mobile or web. And also, this is really our secret sauce. We call it DaaPS, and that stands for databases. So a variety of different databases, IncentiFind being the one that all of our real estate property owners use. We also do analytics, right? So we find grants based on your profile that you're going to be more applicable to apply for, and that you have a higher probability to go get. We also do the alignment, and usually that's political alignment. That's funny because we're right in the middle of an election right now, but we help you get a letter of recommendation from a state rep, a city councilman. As you know, if you have a letter of recommendation, usually with your grant or incentives, it usually rises to the top. And then we have 2,500 consultants across the US, Canada, and Mexico that actually write the grants for you. So, and everything's housed in the system. So we do everything, right? We find in the grants or incentives, we will write the proposals, we'll track everything, and we'll manage everything. It's full service. By doing that and pushing everything together, you don't have to find all these different consultants. You don't have to look for IncentiFind. You don't have to figure out how you're going to apply for this. It's all in one platform. And the biggest thing with us, and I think if some of you heard of our story in the beginning, and I'm gonna keep this interactive. If you remember our story in the beginning, put it in the chat. So we got burned. That's the reason why we started GrantSource. So what we wanted to do is build a platform that you can easily find, write, track, and manage grants. It was full service, and people don't have to risk losing money trying to go after money. So what we've been featured in Forbes in, what we've been featured by Google as one of the top startups to watch, why we're on the front page of the AWS startup website is our investment protection. If you don't at least get your investment back, whatever you subscribe to us with, and we'll go over pricing at the end, we will either continue to write grants at no additional cost or give you a cash credit for the difference, right? And we've helped people get millions of dollars worth of grants, and we haven't had to give a credit yet. So that's a knock on wood, but that's why people do business with GrantSource. If there's any questions, like I said, I want to keep this interactive. I'm going to go pretty fast because I know at a certain point, Natalie may give me the Apollo hook and pull me off the stage. So just ask your questions in the chat. Next slide, guys.
Yeah.
So again, this is our secret sauce. It's our DaaPS. It's trademarked. This is our secret sauce, right? Databases of all kinds of different databases, analytics, alignment, personnel, and a system license as a service. And I'm gonna make sure everybody's awake out there. So I'm gonna check in with you. Type in DaaPS in the chat if you know what it is. Just type it in. DaaPS stands for databases, analytics, alignment, personnel, and a system license as a subscription. Excellent. Next slide, Grace. All right, so how does we connect with a variety of different real estate entities? I know there was a lot of, there you go, Robert, typing in the chat, keeping you engaged. There's a lot of different real estate entities that we connect with. I am a real estate investor myself. So I started when I was 21, I started in a real estate investment company, right? When I was in college. After that, I bought a bunch of single family properties. As of late, I have sold all my single family except 2 of them. And I'm invested in a couple of apartment complexes. And I also am a partner in some co-working spaces in underserved neighborhoods in different cities across the nation. So as we build those out, I'm in the same boat that most of you are. I was fortunate last year to be one of the keynote speakers at the Wealth and Passive Income Expo, where thousands of real estate investors from all over the world come, and that was at the George R. Brown. So here's we service, and we have over 200 different clients, full service. So whether your healthcare is number one right now, as you can imagine during COVID, private practices in hospitals, call it commercial office buildings, where I was at the George R. Brown, a bunch of multifamily apartment complex owners, as little as 10 units, right? All the way up to hundreds of units. Educational institutions, we do churches, and a lot of tech companies have offices as well that we service. So a variety of different types of properties. But here's the thing. What we do is much different than other organizations, because not only do we find grants, we also do something, and this is why we've been featured, and Forbes just wrote an article on us, why we've been featured in those publications was we also do the consulting to unlock other grants that you may not have been eligible for in the past. So let's go through that. There's a concept called the cost center. And before I go through that, I want everybody to understand this. And no, go ahead, Grace, next slide. I want everybody to understand a concept called the Great Wealth Transfer. Everybody type in the Great Wealth Transfer in the chat. Now, what this is, if you don't know what this is what economists are saying for real estate property owners. This is going to be the greatest 10-year opportunity, no matter if it's COVID, no matter if we're in a pandemic. This is the greatest 10-year opportunity in real estate over this next 10 years. Reason is baby boomers are retiring at a rate of 10,000 people every single day. Now, those baby boomers are going to inherit about $67 trillion, and most of those assets are in real estate over the next 10 years. Now, what's important about that, now that we know the Great Wealth Transfer is, now what we know, the baby boomers are going to transfer wealth down to the millennials. Millennials buy very differently, right? They are 70% more likely to buy or spend money that have causes attached to it. And why this is important, and next slide, Grace, this is very important because Fortune 500 companies have spent millions of dollars doing things that you may not have been aware of. As you know, and as you've probably seen in the market, there's causes attached. Every Fortune 500 company has what's called a cause center, and they are attaching to different things, and social impact is a big thing right now, right? People want to know that whatever the company that they're doing business with is giving back, right? Whether it be a big Fortune 500 company or a real estate conglomerate like Keller Williams. I'll give you another example. Every major sports team, next slide, Grace, every major sports team, be it NFL, NBA, they all do things in the community. Why? Because when you do things in the community, you're capturing that millennial mindset, that those people that really care about their brands doing things in the community. Walmart, right? One of the biggest organizations out there. They have call centers all over the US where they do things in the community and give out food. They fix up properties. Now, here's how that is applicable to you. You can now benefit as a real estate property owner from the millions of dollars of research that all of those Fortune 500 companies have done, and bring that same social impact to your property and benefit from that. So next slide, a cause center, and I want everybody to type this in the chat. So a cause center is a type of a nonprofit, right? It's a federally registered 501c3. And what this cause center is it serves as the social impact arm for a for-profit entity. right? So it's totally separate from from your for-profit as far as entity-wise, but it serves as a social impact arm. So I'm gonna give you an example, and these are real, and I'm gonna break down the numbers because I know as real estate owners, you wanna know the numbers, and incentives are a big part of that. So next slide, Grace. Here's a property. So it doesn't matter whether you have a commercial building, whether that you have a multifamily. I'm gonna break this down into a multifamily property. So, and you'll see this and you'll be glad that you're on this webinar because you're gonna see this a lot over this next 10 years. So property A, right? They have no real impact. They're just another property. And if you don't start doing this, you're going to, just like if you're not going after incentives, you're going to lose money and you're going to be left out because your competitors are going to eat your lunch, right? And none of us want that. So property A, and by the way, this is the same property before and after. Property A has no impact. In just a couple months, property B, not only did they go after incentives, and I'm going to show you the case study on how this broke down, to fix up a part of their property, they created a community garden. They were able to transfer some expenses to reduce their NOI, right? Because if you decrease your expenses, your NOI goes up and so does the value of your property, and we'll go through that. But just by putting a cause into your property, one, you're going to be able to go around into the neighborhood and let people know what cause that you have. It may even be an after-school program, right? It may be a community garden. It may be a trash cleanup. It may be COVID outreach, whatever that cause is. One, now that you have a cause center, you can incorporate that cause and increase the reputation of your property. And I'll show you how that increases money for you. Two, you can build out your property and get grants to actually do the build out and actually get money for incentives, because some of what you're doing is getting green money to build this out, right? So that is huge. And this is going to blow your mind. And this is why I partner with Natalie to do things like this. So next slide. Here's the benefit. Each cost center that you build has about a 200K benefit, right? Natalie told you that not only does she help you find grants, she helps you find incentives, helps you find tax credits. So this is going to be a $50,000 tax credit. Every cost center, you're able to get $120,000 in marketing grants. And then you're able to increase sales by about $30,000 within 60 to 90 days. And I'm going to show you the numbers in a minute. You're able to utilize green money incentives to increase your NOI and unlock things like foundation grants, corporation grants, celebrity grants. So if you don't get anything else, just know you saw the IncentiFind webinar today, and I saw how I can create a cost center. Type in the chat 200K benefit for a cost center, right? If you don't get anything else out of it. Next slide, Grace. And here's how it works for your property. So you create a cost center, you're able to run a quarterly event, and by the end, just so there's no suspense, we do everything for you, soup to nuts. And I'll show you a quick demo on how it's in the platform. We help you maintain compliance, right? Because it has to be a separate entity, and we do all of the compliance, all the filing, everything you need to do. We help you create the impact reports. There's a thing out there, and I just did a huge webinar with KPMG. There's a thing that's called environmental social governance. That is a big buzzword right now. And we're able to, there's a bunch of people. Not only do you get incentives, you can also get investors from companies that may want to invest with you when you're going to go and do that next raise, right? You're going to shop that PPM to get new investors for that new property. If you have ESG components, not only can you go after and get more money for that, you can also get some new incentives for the environmental part of that with green money. So we help you get money for your mission all the way around. If you're excited, type it in the chat, right? I want to make sure everybody's staying with us. Next slide. So, and we've done this. If you look at, we have over 7 strategic partners and over 700 clients. If you look at that commercial real estate column, we have clients, property managers that have hundreds of properties all across the US. We have single properties, we have asset management companies. So wherever you are, we can help you in the real estate space. Next slide, Grace. So let's get into the numbers and show you, I have about 15 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up. If there's any questions, type it in the chat. But here's the thing. Here's an actual property, how a cost center was able to help. And we're going to break down the numbers line by line. So you see the proof is in the pudding, right? Because as an investor, you want to see, hey, this is great. What's the ROI? Next slide. So first, we want to show you how to increase revenue. And I'm going to go through this pretty quick. If anybody has any questions, type it in the chat. So next slide, Grace. Here's how we increase revenue. So everybody knows if you go in and you have a distressed property, whether it's a commercial office building, whether it's an apartment complex, if you're able to increase the reputation within that property, you can increase revenue. If you're able to increase, right, because that's the cap rate, if you're able to increase the rent that comes in and the amount of money that comes into the property, you can increase reputation. So imagine this, and this happened with this property that I just showed you. They were able to create a cost center. They were able to build a community garden. They were able to get incentives for that, right? To increase the value of their property. And also by doing that, if you make your property prettier, you're gonna get new leases. So within the first 30 days, they got a new lease, which to them increased the revenue of their property by 10,800, right? $950 a month. $750 a month for that property. And they were also able to raise rent because some of the improvements they did with the incentive money made their property look better, and they were able to raise rents all around. So that's huge. That's how you increase revenue. Next slide, Grace. 2, I want to show you how to decrease or transfer expenses. Next. So if you're doing landscape, so one of the things that Natalie showed you when it came to LED lighting, when it came to doing things from an environmental standpoint, she also talked about landscaping. So how would you like to do all of that and have incentives pay for that? At the same time, how would you like to transfer those expenses to that cost center? Well, that's what they did. And by doing that and transferring their expenses, they were able to increase their overall NOI and put that money in their pocket without having to impact their property, which increased the value. So if anybody has any questions, just type it in the chat. So they were able to do that with landscaping, electricity. Everybody has a cable and internet bill, right? Instead of doing that, now that you have a cost center, you can transfer those expenses. And these are all qualified. As you see in the top left corner, KPMG, they are one of the big 4 accounting firms. They do all of the compliance for all of our properties to make sure that that is on the up and up, and to make sure that you get your write-offs. One of the most reputable companies in the world. So all comes within the package. Next slide, Grace. And then number 3 is get money for your mission with grants and incentives. So when it comes to grants, when it comes to incentives, we're able to get money for your mission. And there's a variety of different ways. I'm gonna break down the incentives as well in a minute with 2 properties. So next slide, Grace. So the summary, right? We want to increase our net operating income. We want to increase the actual value of the property, and then the value summary. If I'm going too fast, just type it in the chat, but I want to make sure everybody gets full value before I get the Apollo hook. So next slide. We're able to increase the value, if everybody saw that, of this property using incentives and using a cost center. So we were able to increase rent and the reputation of the property. That was about $23,000. We were able to decrease and transfer about $11,900 in expenses, which increased our overall NOI of this property in 90 days, about $32,700. Next slide. Now what that did, right, at a cap rate, at a 7 cap rate, that increased the value of our property in, guys, we're talking in 90 days, right? 90 days. That increased the value of the property. Now, 90 days after, there's some pre-qualification, as Natalie said, and we'll go through that timeline again. You want to make sure that you have not broken ground on the property. So we need to get involved. Even if you're looking at buying the property, we need to get involved and create that cost center and do things before you actually are rehabbing the property, because that's very important. And Natalie has probably told you, once you break ground, you may lose almost 80% of the time. You're going to lose the ability to get these incentives and do some of the things we're talking about. But all those holding true, if you get in front of the project, you engage us early, we're able to increase the value of this property by about 500 grand, right? Once we got pre-approval and everything, and we're able to get the cost center up and running 90 days after all those things were complete. So if you would like to increase the value of your property by 500 grand, type it in the chat. There we go. So the value summary is with the marketing grants, with the tax write-offs, with the increase in value, the total net output was about 600 grand, right? And we're talking and grants and incentives all in one package. This is a real case study that we were actually able to do. That's why we were one of the keynote speakers at the George R. Brown. So next slide. Let me show you a demo, and I'm gonna show you how easy it is to just connect with these. Once you become a client, and everything is very simple. I'm gonna share my screen with you. Hopefully I don't hit the eject button with anybody. So once you get into our system, everything is very, very simple. You go to our website, and this is available either on mobile or web, right? As you can see, here's our website, Get Money for Your Mission. And as I said, instead of Natalie and I, we partner, right? We don't compete at all. So everything is within the system. If you have any questions about anything in the system, we are a technology platform with a human touch. So right when you go to onboarding, there's over 180 different videos on every type of grant, every type of incentives that you can go through. We gather information. So specifically talking about incentives, yes, we do government grants, foundation grants, corporation grants, celebrity grants, SBIR grants. But when it comes to your property, you would just click on the IncentiFind green money report, and then you would put in a little bit of information about your property, right? Tell us about your property. How long have you had it? What type of property is it? What city, the state, what's the address? Because that's where your incentives are connected through. What stage is your project in? And then once you fill out all of this information in about 10 days, because we want to house all the information that you qualify for, we'll be able to produce a report, right? And this report has everything in it. It'll connect to water, electricity, gas, rebates, taxes, all kinds of incentives. We'll mark every incentive that you qualify for. Yes, I know it's a pretty report, right? all the utilities at every level that Natalie talked about, local, federal, city, county, state. We'll give you all the information on it, and then we'll actually apply for things for you, right? We'll show you everything. So that's very simple. That's the demo on that. So wrapping up, let me go through one or two things. I know the $1 million question is, hey, does this cost $1 million? So I'm gonna go back into that, answer a few questions regarding pricing, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. Everybody with me? Type in the chat if you're still with me. Okay, cool. So wrapping up here. So how does GrantSource work with IncentiFind? I just showed everybody. It's very simple. Once you become a go back real quick. Once you become a GrantSource client, you'll have access to all of those incentives in every single state in the US. And as Natalie said, now going into Canada. We have a few clients in Toronto, which is cool. So $20 billion with a B in incentives. So next slide. So here's two, so whether they're health, as I said, there's a variety of different things, healthcare private practices. Here's a couple case studies, right? 131 incentives available. That's that big search survey that you go through. They were eligible for 9, really considered about 4, and $113,000, right? Lighting, HVAC, and controls. Another one, apartment complex, right? Those of you that own multifamily properties, 145 incentives available, of course. And like Natalie said, we're gonna have a strategy session after that to really handpick the ones that you're eligible and really gonna consider. So we're applying for LED lighting, roof insulation, solar, and then different loans. So all kinds of things. These are real projects. Everything is streamlined. Getting and answering the pricing question. Next slide, Grace, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Just so, and I want to timing before we get to pricing. You want the first 90 days of what we do is really critical because we want to do all the strategy sessions. We want to get the information about your project, right? We want to submit for pre-approval because that does take a few months. And then after that, like really within 90 days, and this is before you break ground, we can really dig down into what you're eligible for and get those large grants, those large incentives, those green money incentives, marketing, foundation, and corporation grants. So it does take a little bit of time, but it's well worth it. And if we get to the end of here and we don't at least get your investment back, as I said, it's risk-free. So we'll continue to write at no cost, or we'll give you a cash credit for the difference. That's how confident we are in our service. So one last thing, pricing, and we'll open it up for Q&A. If you did everything yourself, type in the chat if this slide makes you dizzy. So if you did everything yourself, it would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we'll show you that on the proposal. There's 38 different things that you have to do to create a qualified cost center. We do everything for you. We do all the filing, all the compliance, all the digital assets, all the grants, we'll find the incentives, we'll even apply for them for you. And last slide. So what we do for per property, per location, we help our organizations raise anywhere from $50,000 to $1 million per locations. And our clients invest anywhere from $500 to $5,000 a month per location, right? Depending on how, and one location may have 5, 6, 7, 10 incentives, right? So it's per case. But with investment protection, it's 100% risk-free. Our average ticket price is about $3K per month. Our clients are generally cash flow positive in their 4th or 5th month. As I said, it takes a few months to get all that pre-approval, to connect to all those grants, to do your cost center. the average ROI is about 10 to 15x. So that just gives you a baseline of where you're at. I know most investors want to know, hey, what's the ROI? Because if the ROI is there and I don't have to risk losing money, I'm in. I just showed you a property that got grants, got incentives, and increased the value of their property by about 500 grand. So this site will be up. You'll be able to see this video, and we'll replay it because what Natalie has put together here is absolutely incredible. And you'll be able to submit an assessment so we can give you a customized proposal for your property. So with that, that's all I have, Natalie.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. And I think we've got at least a little bit of time real quick. I got some direct message questions. So I think definitely we want to cover this one. If I work with this from one of our attendees, if I work with corporations that obviously have established cause centers, if you will,
Absolutely.
Can I still use Grant Source?
Absolutely, yeah. So what we do is they may have the entity established, but they may not be going after the grants and the programs and everything. So obviously, yeah, we can help with that and the incentives going all the way through. So I would say go to that site, put in an assessment, and we can have a conversation directly.
Okay. Perfect. The second question is, and I think it's a good question. Do I start with IncentiFind or Grant Source? And I think it depends on what the value is that you're providing to your customer. Look, at the end of the day, as Alan had mentioned, we have two very separate but complementary databases that are out there, right? You've seen what Grant Source database can do. IncentiFind, we're just real estate focused, right? For either new construction or an existing building upgrade, right? Vertical assets. So I think, if you're starting with a project, maybe you're an architect, engineer, general contractor on the line, or property manager, facility manager, and you've got that upcoming upgrade and it's pretty, cut and dry, I think you can start with IncentiFind. Also, please note that in our survey, we're going to ask you a question that would help you understand if you also need to maybe run an assessment with Grant Source. In our 2-minute question, I can't remember which number it is, we're going to ask you, are environmental sustainability or corporate responsibility or social responsibility goals part of your project, you or your owner's project? If you answer yes, we're going to make sure that we remind you need to check out Grant Source, right? Because he has incentives, as he showed you today, that could help you address that, right? Or bring additional value to maybe the owner you're serving, or perhaps you're one of those owners on the line, right? So I think it's really, it doesn't matter. Let's say you even start with Grant Source. He just demoed how no matter what, you're going to be able to access IncentiFind's database. So we're constantly making sure that we're examining the full landscape of incentives that are available to corporations, organizations, companies, right? And that also own real estate or plan to develop real estate. So just trying to make sure we're covering the bases for you without adding more to your plate, right? And our relationship will continue to grow. And I see some more questions coming in. However, we are at time. So tell you what, as always, you guys know that you've got my contact information. Please submit those questions. I'll make sure they get over to Alan. And at the beginning, I had mentioned that this is, we usually like to do part 1 of 2 with some of our partners. So Alan, I'm getting the sense based on the questions that come in, we probably need a part 2, and maybe we can just like laser focus on some of the projects that we've already completed for part 2 of our demonstration.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it, Natalie. If you have any questions, just follow them through Natalie and she'll get them to me. We partner every day. So thank you for the time and thank you for having us, Natalie. This has been great.
You bet. You guys take care and thanks so much. See everyone next month.
All right. Have a good one.